get why I'm killing all these zombies. I mean, they're already freaking dead.
You lose. Game over.
I lose again. Oops. Oh well. Maybe I need some time out from gaming before I break something else. Let's pass our time with a story instead. I call this story Zombie Evil 4.
There on the floor lies the body of a man. He appears to have been in his mid-late 30s. Though now dry, his shirt is ruffled in a way that shows that it used to be wet around the collar, most likely from saliva, as there is evidence around his lower lip and chin that he had been drooling. His pants are soiled and overflowing with excrement. The rancid odor mixed with the smell of rot and decay. His body is stiff and his arms are twisted in an unusual manner. All but one of his fingers seem to have been broken on his left hand. Some are even torn off and laying on the ground next to the man's body. His right hand is still gripping a Game Station 2 controller. Though the cord to the controller itself is no longer plugged into its port, the console and the television are properly set up as if the game was in progress. There is even an error display still being shown on the screen as if the game was removed prematurely. On a table nearby sits a very strange and unusual video game kept neatly in its case. The cover art displays the head of what appears to be an undead skull with its jaw hanging open. In its mouth reads the game's title, Zombie Evil 4. An old MP3 recorder lies next to the game. It is scuffed and dirty with age. There is a bloody thumbprint over the record button. Though it appears to be an outdated model, the recorder works just as if it was new when turned on. There's only a single audio file on it, but it takes up the entirety of the device's internal memory storage. It is a message presumably left by the previous owner. The following is the audio from the recording.
I'll start from the beginning. January 11th, 2005. The day Zombie Evil 4 was released for the Game Station 2. It was the latest installment in a series of survival horror type games that all the parents would get up in arms about if they knew their kid was playing it. Rated M for mature. Full of blood and gore, loss of limbs, disembowelment, and decapitation. It was expected to be, without question, the most wanted game to come out that year. And it was. And why wouldn't it be? Zombie Evil had seen continual success as a video game franchise since the first game in the series was released in Japan back in 1996. I was only 16 when the fourth installment in the series was released. Not old enough to buy it at the time. Sure, my parents could have gotten it for me if they wanted to, but they didn't approve. My parents went as far as to bar me from visiting any friends' homes if they had even the slightest inkling that there was any possibility they may have the game. People were feverishly anticipating the day of its release, and that day did eventually come. And it was more chaotic than anyone could have imagined. Nothing else mattered once that game hit store shelves. Customers did everything they could to get their hands on a copy. They rushed to the stores, causing traffic to crawl to a near halt. The second the shops opened their doors, rabid hordes stormed in. So many lives were lost on that day. People were crushed to death as others climbed over their bodies. Limbs were lost. People were torn in half. The stores couldn't keep up with the demand. It was sheer madness. Those that were lucky went home empty-handed with only a few scratches, but all got their copies eventually. Millions were sold. That was probably the worst part. There was no escaping the allure of that game. People of all ages played it, but it was the young that suffered the most. Boy or girl, it didn't matter. They were playing it. It was all they cared about. It was more important than grades, experimenting with drugs, or fooling around for the first time. All that stupid crap teenagers are expected to fixate on. It was more essential than food or water. I mean that quite literally. They would play for days, even weeks at a time, not stopping for anything, not to eat or drink, not even to go to the bathroom. They were so hooked on that game that they just couldn't pull away from it, not without others intervening. Their controllers had to be forcibly pried from their hands. So tight was their grip on it that there were cases of fingers breaking or even snapping off. They had to be dragged away from their screens. They kicked, screamed, bit, and clawed at those that dared get between them in the game. They inflicted severe, sometimes even deadly, injuries on those trying to help them. But regardless of the risk, it was something that had to be done if there was any hope that the child was to survive. It was awful. Without intervention, they would continue to play until they dropped dead. Heart attack, stroke, dehydration, and starvation. Those were the typical causes of death. Those that survived were no better off than had they never stopped playing. They were drained of life, almost as undead as the zombies in the game. They couldn't speak, not words anyway. They were only capable of grunts and growls, snarling and howling. And the moans. Oh God, the moans. The sounds they made were horrifying. For the most part, they had to be force-fed. Unless it was meat. Not the processed crap either. It had to be fresh. It didn't even matter if it was cooked or raw. It didn't even need to be dead. The worst part was, they remained violent in the presence of others. Didn't matter if it was animal or human. All were a target for their rage. And yes, they were indeed cannibalistic. Not to each other, not to the other victims of the game. The rest of us, though, we were on the menu. Those affected by that wretched game were either caught and contained or put down. I don't mean they were euthanized or taken out in a humane manner either. They were taken out no differently than if they were wild animals. All copies of the game needed to be located and destroyed. It was absolutely imperative that each and every copy was accounted for. And they were almost successful in doing so. One copy has eluded them, lost, until now. If you are listening to this recording, what you have stumbled upon is one of a kind, priceless, powerful, and deadly. You now possess the last remaining copy of Zombie Evil 4. What you do with it is not my concern. I don't really give a damn anymore. I've held on to it for too long. Somehow resisted the urge to play the game myself. If I can feel myself losing control right now, please, I must play Zombie Evil 4.
Well, that was an interesting one. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. And if you want even more creepy content like that, be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit that bell thingy down below. Oh, and before I go, I want to give a huge thank you to my friends, Silver Underworld and Phoenix Fire, for helping me on this project. Be sure to check out their channels. Oh, and one more thing. Stop killing zombies! They're living impaired, you ableist jerks! What's wrong with you people? I'll see you next time.